That was that 18-page exposure draft which the central bank released, a comprehensive consumer protection disclosure and transparency framework guidelines, which was released about 2 days ago. The financial regulator is bringing this out for the first time, a comprehensive document to guide participants, banks, and other financial institutions on what we're now seeing as an emerging financial inclusion and expanded financial services provision on Broad Street. Not just the banks, but it looks like the business is now expanding almost on a daily basis. This is what's called a fintech revolution, and that is bringing non-bank participants into the space. So let's give you a sense of this. We talked about it to try to break it down for you, what was contained in that document, and we advised everyone to take time to read through this 18-page document if you need professional advice on how to understand what this disclosure and transparency, consumer protection, exposure draft is all about. You need to seek that. So let's speak to Ayodeji Ebo, who is a CEO at Afrinvest Securities. Ayodeji works in the practice in the securities market, so he understands why disclosure and transparency is very key, and consumer protection or investors protection is very important when we talk about the financial services industry. Good morning, Ayodeji. Welcome to the show.
Boston, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. Disclosure and transparency, where you are seated at the stock exchange and, in fact, the financial market, those are part of the key pillars of any financial market, isn't it?
Yes, the disclosure is key, and it helps even both parties in terms of when you are going into an agreement regarding a transaction. So it helps to resolve, not to have issues within the transactions.
Yes, when we talk about the banking sector, of course, there are people talked about charges, bank charge them. Some folks says, well, yes, I know I'm owing, but I didn't read the document. There are little print somewhere at the back or at the bottom of the contract letter. Before I took the credit, I didn't read it. I didn't understand it. Why is there foreclosure and coming to... sometimes it could get a bit messy out there in a bank-customer relationship.
Yes, I think this new draft of the consumer protection policy, especially looking at consumer lending, is laudable. When you know with numerous firms or coming up with different credit products, it's good to, it's like the CBN is trying to regulate that space because if it's not properly regulated, in terms of the bad loans that may also crystallize from the lending space that the CBN is trying to push, may not be very good for the economy. And we know in terms of financial inclusion, for most of the populace, for those that are trying to they are trying to channel this loan to, for some of them are not financially savvy, and it's good that they have upfront or ab initio, they have an understanding in terms of the terms of the loan or in terms of the agreement, even before they go into it. So when you look at in terms of the new policy on credit or customer protection on credit that has been published, so what CBN is typically trying to ensure is that before the consumer signs the agreement or agrees to take the loan, it is good for the financial institution, both banks and non-banks that are involved, to explicitly show in terms of the terms of the loan. So part of what they've tried to emphasize is trying to show the rate annually, because you look at what typically is available on the streets right now, it's the monthly rate. And for most people that are not financially savvy, may not know, when they look at the annualized rate, you see rates as high as 3% per month, 4% per month. By the time you annualize it, that's like 48%. It means that if you are collecting 1 million, at the end of 1 year, you are paying back with 1.5 million. That's if it's like 50%. So when you look at the implication, when you look at it, before I take this loan, in terms of what the loan will be used for, can I recoup in terms of either the business or whatever you want to use this loan for? If you're able to ascertain that upfront, then it will also make it easier for you to pay back. So these are some of those things to avoid arguments or to avoid issues when you are trying to pay back and you discover that you have to pay back the 1 million as well as additional 500 at the end of the loan. So these are some of those things. And you also have what we call the fixed interest rate loans as well as the floating interest rates. The fixed is that you agree upfront if it's for 1 year or 2 years. Even if MPR moves to 20%, the bank cannot write to you that they want to review the loan upwards. And also, if it's a floating loan and is attached to a particular indicator or a variable, for instance, so if it's attached to the MPR, if MPR goes up by 5%, it means that your interest rate on your loan can also go up. These are some of the terms of the loan that most consumers need to understand. And the CBN is asking banks and non-banks to state some of these terms upfront, such that they don't mislead the consumers that are trying to take the loan. I think this is laudable and it will help regulate that space.
Well, this is an exposure draft, Ayodeji, so I'm sure the central bank has thrown it out there for everyone to make comments on, as it were, before it goes into full effect, as it were. There was no timeline set for that yet, but I'm sure you've gone through this document a little bit over the last 2 days or so. Are you encouraged by the fact that the central bank is now looking at a consumer protection as it's moving into consumer lending space and pushing banks using whatever monetary policy to moral suasion, whatever, to get consumers to take loans, and not just those consumers, because the consumer loan credit regime we're going into will involve supermarkets and others. So even supermarkets, which are businesses, could also go into a credit arrangement with a financial services provider. Not just individuals.
Yes, I think it is a step in the right direction. It's a step in the right direction because for even any economy to grow, sometimes you need credit to move the economy. You don't have to pay cash for most of the goods or services that you want to purchase. So to regulate this space, I think it's a good one that CBN is coming up with the draft. And some of what I think, based on my own comments, based on this new exposure draft, is that the monthly rates may also be stated, should be allowed to be stated. However, the annualized rate should be included because for their short-term, what we call these quick loan, short-term loans that people also try to assess once in a while. So, and maybe you need the loan just for 3 months, rather than you trying to calculate back what the monthly rate would be. You can have what the monthly rate would be and also state the annualized rate. Also, I think in terms of the credit scoring, I don't think nothing was, the CBN did not touch more on credit scoring. Yes, they said the credit history should be stated. But if we also if we're trying to see how we want to drive this economy in terms of using credit to drive the economy, credit score is also critical. That will also help individuals to work towards achieving a very good credit score or high credit score that will help the consumer access loan at a very cheap rate. We currently have what we call the prime lending for the blue chips and also the maximum lending. But for individual, you may want to achieve, if the standard average industry interest rate is around 25%, for instance, I may want to work towards, based on my credit rating or my credit score, I may want to work towards going to around 10%, 20%, for instance. it means maybe based on the criteria they would have used is maybe I've collected loan 3 or 4 times and I've tried to repay and I've been very consistent. Some of those things will also help the firms that are lending, because every individual will want to achieve a very good credit score that would enable that consumer access loan at a very cheap rate. We see it work in the developed climes. So if we can also try to introduce that, it will also help for those that are also lending. What they will ask you is, what is your credit score? We have the different credit bureaus, but the scores or the criteria used should be standardized such that as a young man coming up, you want to work towards achieving a particular credit score such that the day you need to access loan, based on that, you are able to access loan based on the credit score that you've been able to work on for yourself within a particular period. So if they can also touch more on that, I think it will help shape that space and also reduce the bad loan that for most of us are wary of in terms of the rate at which CBN is trying to persuade the banks or to lend.
Well, one of the areas that the new exposure draft on consumer protection touched on had to do with the charges that the banks or financial institutions or service providers ask consumers to pay. A lot on my phone, for example, you send me emails, you send unsolicited messages to my phone, then you're deducting certain amounts. There's a lot of talk about maintenance of accounts, ATM, and all of the ATM cards and what have you. But these exposure draft guidelines also touch a little bit on that. Did you take note of that?
Yes. Yes, I think yes. I think it's also laudable because we've noticed, if you look at in the past, most people are wary to take loans, especially from the banks, because of what we call hidden charges. But with what the CBN has also stated and is trying to standardize, that you have to state all the charges upfront, even including the penalty, in terms of the grace period before the penalty will kick in, what rates will be applied on the loan based on whether it's going to be a reducing balance, it's going to be a flat rate. If you want to pay down, what will be the charges? Some of those terms should be stated upfront because, you know, it's like in terms of the perception people have about the insurance industry, though that is improving in terms of claims. That is what a lot of people still have. Then in terms of hidden charges, so it's at the point when you are trying to liquidate, at the point when you are trying to restructure the loan, that you discover that there are some terms in terms of charges that are hidden in the agreement that you have signed. So CBN is saying most of those charges in terms of if there's going to be management fee, commitment fee, if there's going to be most of the fees that are attached, you have to state that upfront. Also, there's unsolicited SMSs, that is messages that is being sent out. For instance, you shouldn't charge the consumer for that because the consumer did not request for such for those messages. So I think the CBN is trying to clean up that space. So because we've noticed a lot of industry firms are going into lending, trying to use that to complement their business. So once you have excess cash, you are trying to see how you can raise credit, you can create credit assets, and you can lend that to those that are willing to take it up. So it's good to standardize it. Even for the consumer, they would also, like you mentioned, they should also study this exposure draft, and they can also make suggestions. And as such, for both parties, the lender and for those that, in quotes, maybe the lendee, the person receiving, it would also be able to, for both parties, they will be able to smile. And once the agreement has been understood upfront, there will be no issue in terms of payment or paying down on this loan.
Yeah, you touch on this is a very important information for viewers here to understand. You say if you're a financial service provider and you're charging me for SMS alert, every information you send in. So if you upgrade your system, you send me an SMS. If you are launching new products, which I did not ask for, or you're opening a new headquarters or new branches somewhere in my village, in Kogi State, you send me an alert. I didn't ask for that. Yeah, but they keep billing me for SMS, and it keeps going out of my account. I don't like that. A lot of people complain about that. Do you like that, Ayodeji Ebo?
Yes, No, it's not the burden shouldn't lie with the consumer, because you call it unsolicited messages. So even if you have to disturb me with your messages, then you don't also have to charge me for it.
I like that. If you disturb me with the messages, then don't charge me for it at the same time. I think I like that. I got that on the side of the consumers. Now, speaking broadly, you're in the securities market, but you spent quite a number of years on Market Street. Do you see this? There's a changing landscape here. How much more work do you think now rests on the Central Bank of Nigeria to make sure that this consumer protection, which is being sought after, is delivered in the interest of the consumers? Because this document was captioned Consumer Protection, Disclosure, and Transparency.
Yes, I think it's now going to be more of consumer education in terms of they need to go all out to ensure to break it down, release the policy in different languages, try to go to the villages, those that, the small lenders, to enable them understand so that when they are being cheated, they can be able to, they know their rights, they can be able to fight it, and they don't feel very displeased such that they don't want to access credit again based on past experiences. So what I feel, once this is approved based on different comments that the CBN would receive, the CBN will need to go all out in terms of using the social media, town hall meetings, to break it down for consumers to really understand what it entails to take loan. It's not like a national cake that you want. It's not a grant. When you are going into, you are taking credit, you need to be sure what you are using it for, and you need to have that mindset that you need to pay back so that other people can also access it, and also the firm that has mobilized you with the loan can also keep running.
Yeah, everybody's got responsibilities and duties around the table, and I like that, because consumer protection is a two-way thing. There are rules, there are obligations, and things you need to do. So there are responsibilities and duties for everyone, both the providers, the borrowers, and as well the financial regulator. Thank you so much, Ayodeji Ebo, for sharing part of your time this Wednesday morning to drill down on this. We'll continue to do more of this in the days ahead. Of course, as you rightly put it, the central bank needs to hit the ground running, making this information available to people at the local level, at the grassroots level, where this new consumer lending program was being targeted. Thank you so much, Ayodeji Ebo, a CEO, a chartered stockbroker, and the head of Afrinvest Securities. We appreciate your time.